All right, let's just jump right into this. We're talking about a financial system that affects literally every single one of us, every single day, yet it's incredibly misunderstood. Yep, I'm talking about taxes. It's kind of funny, actually. It's one of the oldest economic systems in human history. But because we're so used to just seeing it quietly vanish from our paychecks or tacked onto our grocery receipts, we rarely stop to think about how the whole system actually works. Well, today, we're going to fix that. We're breaking down the mechanics of money and society in a way that just makes sense.
To get a really solid grasp on this, we're going to walk through 6 quick steps. We'll start by imagining a world without taxes, then look at the idea of public goods, break down the 4 main types of taxes, see exactly where all that money goes, look at how taxes shape our behavior, and finally wrap up with why this actually matters to you. No finance degree needed here, I promise.
Okay, Section 1, a world without taxes. Let's start by looking at a hypothetical scenario. You know, a world that a lot of people daydream about. So, what if all taxes just disappeared tomorrow? Imagine waking up and finding out that income, sales, corporate, and property taxes have simply vanished. Just poof, gone overnight. At first glance, this sounds absolutely fantastic, right? You get to keep your entire paycheck, no annoying deductions, products become way cheaper at the register, and businesses, they face far fewer obligations and paperwork. For a minute there, everyone feels incredibly rich. But let's pause and think about the actual immediate consequences of this little fantasy. Because without tax revenue, we suddenly hit a massive wall. Who pays for the roads, schools, and hospitals? We'd face the terrifying reality of unmaintained roads crumbling under our cars, public schools shutting down and leaving millions of kids without an education, and zero funding for fire services or hospitals. If you call 911, no one's coming. The fantasy shatters pretty quickly when you realize the literal foundation of modern life just lost its funding. Which brings us to Section 2, the idea of public goods. Let's look at how we avoid that nightmare scenario and actually keep society running.
So here's the crucial thing to understand. Taxation isn't just some arbitrary penalty meant to take your hard-earned cash. It's a collective funding system. It's the process through which governments collect money from individuals and businesses to provide services and fund public programs. Basically, society is pooling its resources to buy things in bulk that we couldn't easily organize or afford on our own.
And this comparison brilliantly illustrates why we need this system. Imagine the alternative, individual funding. You'd have to pay a micro-toll every single time you turned onto a new street. You'd have to personally subscribe to the fire department, just in case your kitchen catches fire. You'd even have to chip in directly to buy radar systems for national defense. It would be an absolute logistical nightmare. By shifting to collective funding, we spread those costs out. Everyone chips in, and everyone benefits.
Economists actually have a name for this stuff. They call them public goods. These are services or infrastructure that benefit many people simultaneously. Think street lighting, national defense, and public parks. I mean, you can't really restrict the light from a street lamp to only shine on the people who paid for it, right? Taxes exist primarily to fund these public goods because private markets alone just can't handle them effectively.
All right, Section 3, the 4 types of taxes. Now that we know why they exist, let's break down exactly how governments go about collecting this money. First up is probably the one you know best, income tax. This is collected directly from the money you earn, whether that's your salary, hourly wages, business income, or your investments. And for most of us, we don't even have to physically hand this cash over. It's just automatically deducted right out of our paychecks. It's usually the single largest source of government revenue.
Next, we have sales tax. This one hits you right at the register. It's collected when you, the consumer, purchase goods or services. So, if you buy a pair of shoes for $100 and the local sales tax rate is 10%, you're paying $110. The business just acts as a middleman, collecting that extra $10 and sending it to the government. So, literally every time you shop, you are actively contributing.
Then there's corporate tax, which is imposed specifically on business profits. So after a company earns its revenue and pays all its expenses, like salaries and materials, the profit left over is taxed. What's super interesting here is that this one is heavily debated by economists worldwide. Why? Because tweaking these rates can strongly influence how businesses behave, where they set up their headquarters, and how much they invest in the economy.
Finally, we have property tax. This is paid by property owners based on the value of their land or buildings. What makes this one really unique is that the money usually stays highly local. It frequently funds local schools and emergency services. This means the quality of the community programs and infrastructure in your specific neighborhood is heavily tied to the property values right around you.
Moving on to Section 4, where the money goes. We've collected all this revenue from income, sales, and properties. But what actually happens to it next? Well, it gets allocated across some major priorities: education, healthcare, infrastructure, public safety, defense, and social programs. While every country slices this pie a little differently based on its priorities, these funds are directly paying for teacher salaries, public hospitals, bridges, and police departments. Essentially, these taxes are financing the very systems that make economic growth physically possible in the first place.
Section 5. Shaping Behavior and Trade-offs. Now, most people think taxes only exist to raise money, but they actually serve a hidden second purpose.
Governments intentionally use taxes as a massive policy tool to shape economic outcomes and human behavior. Think about it. Higher taxes on cigarettes make them more expensive, which naturally reduces smoking. Environmental taxes push companies to use cleaner technologies just to save money. And tax incentives, which are basically tax discounts, promote things like buying a home or investing. It's pretty wild. It's a psychological tool just as much as a financial one.
Of course, because taxes are such a massive part of life, there are plenty of myths out there. The biggest one? That taxes just take your money away. It's so easy to focus on that lower number on your pay stub, but the reality is you are trading that money for immense everyday value. From the paved road you drive on, to the safety of your neighborhood, to the regulation of the food you eat, you are actively consuming tax-funded services every single day.
But there's a myth on the flip side, too. The idea that higher taxes always mean better services. That's not exactly true either. Just throwing money at a problem doesn't automatically solve it. The reality is that the effectiveness of government spending and good, transparent governance matters just as much as the sheer amount of cash collected. You absolutely need efficient management of those pooled resources for society to actually thrive. And this creates what economists call the ultimate balancing act of public finance. Policymakers are constantly walking a tightrope here. If taxes are set too low, governments struggle to provide basic essential services. But if taxes are set too high, economic activity and investment might slow down because people and businesses lose the financial incentive to take risks and work hard. Finding that sweet spot is literally one of the hardest jobs in government.
All right, final section, Section 6, Why Taxation Actually Matters. Let's bring all these big picture mechanics back down to you.
Even if you never step foot in an economics class, taxes are constantly impacting your daily routine. They determine your final paycheck, they dictate the actual prices you pay at the grocery store, they fund your local parks and services, and they drive the broad economic growth that creates jobs. Understanding how this all fits together doesn't just make you smarter. It helps you interpret financial news, see through empty political debates, and honestly, just makes you a highly informed citizen.
So the next time you look at your pay stub and see those deductions, remember the massive machinery working behind the scenes. You aren't just losing money into a void. You are actively funding the shared systems, the infrastructure, and the public goods that make modern life possible. Knowing that, how does it change the way you view your next paycheck?